So tonight, we are here to talk about what's called two sides of the coin. And I'm going to explain what that means, but I want you to sort of think about what direction we're going with that. But first, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Tony Pagliacco. As you know, as it's been evident, there's been practice. We've done this a few times. The secret is that there's a silent G. I was born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts. And then I attended Arizona State University, where I was going to be the greatest wrestling coach in all high school until my friends went to spring break, and I found out I couldn't afford it. So I learned how to build a website during spring break, and by the end of spring break, I had transferred to computer science and earned my mother's hate for the rest of my life for adding 2.5 more years onto college. I got about 18 years in the industry so far. My first 10 years or so were in the software side. So I was a web developer, web engineer, working on high volume applications, digital media, large scale surveys, complex skip logic. And then I spent a number of years working, when I became a product manager, it was when I was working in the digital space for a women's network called sheknows.com. We owned 32 owned and operated websites, doing about 60 million uniques a month to Comscore. After that, I went into the gaming industry, where I was, in the next line you can see, at some points in my life, I've considered poker and Magic the Gathering, which is a card game like Pokemon, full-time jobs. And that's what eventually led me to Wizards of the Coast, which is owned by Hasbro. They produce Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, and a few other games. Recently, about maybe 8 months ago, I accepted a position at Boeing as manager for the product management team in the analytics and information services team. And essentially what we do is we focus heavily on machine learning, AI products, working specifically in like manufacturing and supply chain space. So a lot of complex, a lot of data, big data, heavy stress loads, quick analysis. It's definitely a challenging job, and I love it. We're going to go over a real life example of product management and the business and the techies. We're going to talk about the ultimate battle of I want it now versus I want to build it good. And as a product manager, how do you sit in the middle of that and deal with that all day without drinking yourself silly every night? Then we're going to talk about drawing a balance and also talk about pushing and pulling, and I'll explain what I mean by those. So our mission for tonight. For those who are currently product managers, we want to revisit, why are you a product manager? Like, what made you get excited to get into the product management game? Because it's not an easy game. We want to also learn tonight that it's not about us versus them. When you're in product management, when you're in that middle role between the tech world and the business, you feel like you're getting pulled sometimes. And you want to make everyone happy. That's ultimately your goal. You want everyone to be happy and be moving forward. You have to also let go of, it's not us versus them. It's essentially you versus the world. And that doesn't sound really like, that sounds probably scarier, but it also empowers you more to be a better product manager. We want to realize that product managers make informed decisions. I mean, they make decisions all the time, but they only make informed decisions. We as product managers should only be we shouldn't be throwing darts at a board and hoping that we hit. We need to make informed decisions, because at the end of the day, we are the ones that have to go into that room and explain our decisions to vice presidents, to C-level executives, to customers. And there's nothing wrong with failing at times in work. There's nothing wrong with making a decision that might not be popular. But at that same point, you also have to make those decisions with informed data and knowing who the subject matter experts are to talk to. Because the job of just throwing stuff and hoping that it sticks, that's a higher level that's a higher level. We're in the thick of things, so we need to be able to do that, but also be really, really smart about it. We're going to talk about empathy, and how do you incorporate empathy in today's work culture, but at the same time, still have that hustle mentality. Still that I call it sneaky, I call it political maybe, but for me, product management a lot is like a chess game. I'm going to do this, they're going to do that, and then I'm going to get them to where I want them to be so I can get what I want from my product. And that could be devs, that could be resources, that could be negotiating on a requirement. Doesn't matter. But you have to do it in a way where you're being at least empathetic to the people that you're working with, so you're not just taking advantage of everyone without giving it back, because then you'll be isolated, and then you're worth nothing then. And then also have a better perspective about our colleagues, their challenges, trying to, following that train of empathy. How do we understand the people that we work with, and how do we figure out how to push their buttons to get them to drive them harder, to drive them to do more, to be more efficient, to be focused on the customer and the end game, not just on the project sheet or not just someone's dashboard that records things. So touching on that is, what do we do? Why do we do it? Now, there was, I think, 2 or 3 people who raised their hand when I said, who's a product manager currently? Can I see those hands again? Okay. What do we do as product managers, in your opinion? One sentence.
Wear many hats.
Okay, it's like actually physical hats, like cowboy hat, baseball cap.
No, it's more like fulfilling a lot of needs with a lot of different roles that require a lot of different skills to make a lot of different people happy all at once.
Exactly. And the reason why I pushed him on that question a little bit was because when dealing with the business, you're going to get those kinds of answers where he knows what he meant and he assumed I knew what he meant, but I might have actually gone out and wrote a biography about him with all these different hats. Yellow hats, red hats, cowboy hats, everything. That's part of the communication of where you always need to be aware who you're talking to and what you're trying to work with. So when we talked about these earlier, revisit why we're product managers, learning that it's really not us first then, and then we make decisions that are informed. And I'm going to jump forward for 1 second. Nope. Okay, now I know where I'm at. So as product managers, our job is to delight the customer. I know that sounds cheesy as hell. I know that if you've been on YouTube and watched any sort of interviews or any sort of tutorials, they all talk about that, okay? Unfortunately, it's not BS. It's the truth, okay? We sit in a very weird space where we are responsible for the success or failure of a product. And that means everything that goes along with it. That means making sure that delivery is of the highest quality, making sure that the go-to-market strategy is correct and we're in the right target markets, our pricing models are correct. We need to make sure that we're using technologies that can be scaled for the future. And alongside of that, we also have to work very closely with the business and the technology, the dev team, to be able to get us where we need to be. If you compound that into different scenarios where you might have some teams that are in an agile environment, where they're working in cadence and sprints and having structured meetings like planning and retros, it's great. Not every company is like that. Some companies are still going to be old school waterfall. There's going to be some companies that are saying they're agile, but they're still doing waterfall. And those are the toughest ones to work with because you have to convince them that they actually need to improve and make change. And that is one of the most difficult things as a product manager, is influencing change. Change is, having worked in the gaming industry for 6 years, I know for a fact that gamers are the most temperamental people to give change to. It could be changing one card, one level, one color, and Twitter will go up in a storm. So you have to always be mindful of not only the people that you're delivering the product to, but also the people who are building the product and the people who are actually making that product go to market. And now it's time for a real example. I had to get past that slide. What I want to talk about here is when people ask, what do product managers do? I could give them the straight answer. I could tell them that, well, I manage the delivery and yada, 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 and I try and work forward through in a lot of different ways, working with different teams. I can give you real interview answers that sound great on paper but have absolutely no substance. Now, whenever when I'm on the side doing side work, whether it's a mobile app or whether it's a website or anything like that, I have a litmus test that I have to pass before I can send that off back to my friend or for me or whatever. And it's called the mom test. Okay, the mom test is awesome because my mom is 67, 68 years old, okay? And I've seen her flub the most basic things on her iPhone. She had me on FaceTime one night for about an hour, and I was just listening to her watch TV, and I couldn't believe that. I was like, Mom, Mom, nothing. And she's like, oh, I thought I turned it off. Well, that's just one of many times of flubs that she's had. So now when I build something, I send it to her first. I'm like, hey, I built this web page. Can you take a look and see if it works? I'm not asking her to QA it for me. I'm not asking her to put through regression testing. I just want to see if she can get on the page, knows what she needs to do, click through it, success. If it's good for her, then I know it's going to be good for about probably 90% of the other people out there. So this is an example of product management that I use when I talk about the mom test. This is probably, with people not in the tech world, I have to give them what I call my awesome analogy story. And you can steal this one if you like it, or you can come up with your own if you hate it, but I thoroughly recommend you get one. The reason why is because you're going to have people who talk to you, and they're not going to be in the industry, and they're going to ask what you do. And they're going to think you're a project manager. They're going to think you're a program manager. And to make it even tougher, all these companies sometimes have the same job as different titles. At Microsoft, you're a program manager. At Boeing, you're a product manager. At Wizard, you're a producer. So how would I know if I look at a resume and I see a program manager and I'm like, well, I don't need a program manager, I need a product manager, but it's the same job, okay? So when you have to answer that question, find yourself a story that relates to everyone, tech or non-tech, and use that, because that will help you actually in the future of dealing with the business and tech and be able to switch gears on the language very, very quickly. But enough of that. On to the story. So when my mom asked me, she said, oh, what does a product manager do? She thought I was managing like a product like at the grocery store, like yogurt or something. And I was just in charge of this big line of cottage cheese or what have you. No. I said, Mom, I'm in the technology space. Remember that big bill you paid for college? Then it clicked. But when you go to a restaurant, we owned a restaurant in Boston for about 20-something years, okay? Think about when you go to a restaurant, okay? Anyone can yell this out. What's the first thing you do when you get to a restaurant? Okay, who seats you? Okay, host seats you, takes you to your table. That's your first experience right there, right? That's going to dictate how the rest of your meal is probably going to go. Because if the host comes up to you and is like, over there, you're going to be like, oh, this meal's awful. Like, I'm already in a bad mood, okay? But if the service is great, if you feel like you're being taken care of, like you're being paid attention to, you're going to sit down, you're going to look at the menu, and there's going to be a list of items on that menu that have been thought out, crafted, tested for your consumption. And you're going to pick what you want, and someone's going to come over and ask you, how can I help you tonight? What can I get for you? And you're going to say, and I'll take the number 3, blah, 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 blah. Now, that order is going back to the kitchen. Okay, we've got our requirements. We're going back to the kitchen, we're going to tag it up, and there's going to be someone in the back. And even though I've watched every Kitchen Nightmare, I can't remember what this position, expediter, that's what it is, an expediter, who manages all the tickets that are ready to be cooked. And on a layer behind that, you've got the sous chefs and the executive chefs who are actually cooking the meals. They're the ones with the ingredients. They're the ones deciding, do we fry it, bake it, saute it, what do we do? Okay? I just explained to you the full value chain of product management. Our job is to be in charge of the entire restaurant. Our job is to help decide what goes on the menu. We help decide who are the chefs that are going to help us cook those meals. We're going to make sure that meal gets to the customer in short order, and they like the service that they're getting, and the food is tasty. So that way, when they take that first bite, they're going to, this is good. And they're going to come back again for more and more and more. And that's a line that I use with all the products that I release, is the first bite. We always need to make sure that first bite is tasty. Whether it's when they load it up on their phone, take a bite of it off the plate, doesn't matter. That first bite has to be delicious. And at the end of the day, you deliver an experience. And I found the cheesiest looking smile I could find for this picture too. I wanted ultimate cheese on this, because that's the face that we end up having sometimes as product managers. We have to sometimes put that smile, okay, yeah, that's great. You're taking vacation right before this release? Okay, yeah, that's good, And we have to deal with it. We're not in a position where we can afford to show our emotions all the time. It's good to, but we have to, like I said, we have to wear different hats. Sometimes we have to be stern, authoritarian for the purpose. Sometimes we have to be totally laid back and relaxed. Oh, okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead. Go do your kid's thing. You know, just get back to me tomorrow, you know. You have to know how to balance that. Now the fun comes. Where did I put this? I actually brought props tonight. That's how fun I came, because this is the business. And they usually don't wear leather sport coats, but I'm from Boston and it's required dress back in Boston. The business. Blazers, collared shirts, stuffy, boring. Who has to deal with them on a daily basis? Yep. Now the thing is, though, is that they are not the enemy. They are doing a job just like we are, okay? So when we talk about the business, who are we talking about specifically? In most companies, we're talking about maybe the brand team, maybe the marketing team, product development team, different business units, could be HR, finance, could be a bunch of things. It could even be customers within the company, but in a different office. So it's not always going to be a certain person from the business, okay? Unfortunately, in the business side of things, there's a heavier emphasis on P&L, profit and loss, time to market, and cost. Now, we may think in the tech side, oh, you know, they just care about the money. They don't care about actually putting out something great. But it's different because we have our way of being artists and they have their way of being artists, okay? Theirs may be through creative marketing. Theirs may be through ideas that maybe they've thought of that are breakthrough in the market and we haven't seen. They're a different kind of artist. I call them the business artist. However, the business tends to focus more on a hard delivery date than any other part of the company. They're the ones who will come in and say, hey, we've got this great project and, you know, it's going to be, you know, probably about 7 months, you know, to do, and we need it by, you know, 8 weeks. Now, there's fundamentally the first problem when you're dealing in this situation is that the business just told you what they want, when they want it by, how long it'll take. They estimated for you, and then told you when it was due by. That's 3 red flags there that would send me running, or at least screaming, or at least putting on my leather jacket to get tough. You'll also find out that a lot of the times, a lot of business people, they'll try to talk your language. They'll try to use cool buzzwords like talk about agile or stand-ups, or they'll try and get into conversations when you're talking about, like, you know, high scale, high volume data, you know, things like that, where, and you sort of like look like, just talk about what you know. Don't try and jump in my world. I'm not telling you about, you know, color codes or whatever on the other side. You know, I'm not talking about financial forecasts. All right. So you have to be mindful of that. Is that what they say might not be what they mean. They may say they want a sandwich, and then you bring them a ham sandwich, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm a vegetarian," and you're like, "Well, I didn't know that." That's part of actually knowing what the customer wants. They need to know how the restaurant works. Going back to the example from before, they need to know what their role is in that restaurant, okay? The business side is usually the one that's either serving the customer directly, whether through its marketing or different avenues, or they're working in the other side of the business with finances and human resources and things like that. They're not cooking the food. They're not buying the product. So that is where we need to make sure they know how this restaurant works. So that way they're staying in their area and doing what they do best, because they can't do what we do best on the dev side. From the product management side, no one can do what we do really, because we have to live in both worlds and they have to think that we live there all the time. Agenda-ize the business. I keep on calling it the business. And when I say the business, I mean all of those different types of people, the different verticals, the different departments. That's what I mean when I say the business. And I would definitely say agenda-ize them. When I say agenda-ize them, I mean the following. One thing I hate more than anything, meetings. I hate meetings. I hate having tons of meetings, long meetings. I brought up the idea the other day of I'm working on an extension that when you create a meeting in Outlook, it will take a rough idea of the person's role and then apply a number to it based on like, rough average of salary, and then tell you what that meeting costs. So if you have 10 people in that meeting and they're all making like $200 an hour, it's a $2,000 meeting. And then I want people to say, okay, we just spent $2,000 on this meeting. What did we get for it? How can I go to the C level of our company and say, yeah, we spent $2,000 and I've got this great picture of Snoopy that I drew because I was bored the whole time. Okay? That's where you have to agenda. You have to get them in the room for them. When you do have to have meetings with them, agendaizing them means phrase your whole meeting within the form of a question. 1 to 3 questions. So when we have a meeting, it's going to be, when are we starting? Who are we bringing on? What do we need? Now, I don't care what goes on for that meeting. You can talk about whatever you want, because as soon as you know those 3 answers, as soon as you can walk out of the room and comfortably answer those 3 questions, meeting's over. Meeting is over right there because you accomplished what you needed to. Just because you have an hour booked, you don't have to use the hour. On that same note, though, and this is something that I would recommend this if you feel comfortable doing this and brave enough to do it, because it's a risky move. But if it pays off, you get a lot of respect. If it doesn't pay off, well, then you are online looking for a new job probably. But I will actually walk out of a room once a meeting is over. So if they have me booked for 30 minutes in a meeting and the meeting, we hit 9:30, I will get up and walk out, no matter what's going on, no matter who's in the meeting. That's why I said it's a risky move. But what happens is, whoa, we're not done yet. I said, well, you have me for half an hour. But we're not done here yet. Well, then you need to plan better. And then I'll walk out. I'm not doing that to be rude. I'm not doing that to be a mean person. What I'm doing is trying to teach and illustrate of that we need to be mindful of people's time. We need to be respectful of their time and what they're doing. Now, granted, did I have anything pressing after that 9:30? No, of course not. But if I did, I would have been screwed. And so that's where I like to agendaize the business and make them actually have specific questions for everything. So if you come to one of my meetings at work, my agenda is literally the date and 3 bullet points with questions. No reports, no updates, just bam, in and out. Now, the business, though, you have to deal with a very, very specific case. This is getting hot now. The cool trick is gone. Is that when you are dealing with the business, they're going to come to you and say, oh my Lord, we need this thing and we need it in 3 weeks, but it takes 5 weeks to build. One of the most unpopular things that I always do with senior leaders is I'll put them to this question. You have one choice. You can pick the date or you can pick the features. You can't pick both. But I'm a VP. That's great. You still get to pick only one. Reason being is that we can work to any deadline. But if you give us a statement of work that's got 50 features that need to be included with it, and you're giving us no time to properly build it, test it, get research on it, and all these other things, and you just want to get it to market, that's a recipe for disaster right off the bat, and we all know that. So I'll tell them straight up, if you pick the date, we'll tell you what features we'll give you. Or you can pick the features, but we're going to tell you the date. And where you run into a lot of situations is that you'll have the business create dates without talking to the developers, and then it's a hard date now because it's been circulated, or maybe they bought commercial airtime or something without talking, and now you have to really push this negotiation. And I'm not going to lie to you, it is not easy having this conversation. It requires you to be able to actually know what kind of attitude, who you're dealing with, what's the best strategy to get what you want. And this is when that push and pull I'm going to talk about comes into play. It's very easy to sit in an office disconnected, thinking of great ideas. And I think that's great, because I know, at least in the other companies I've worked at, I've worked with genius people on the business side. Geniuses. They just weren't experienced working in technology because these companies were not technology companies. They were not started on like an American Express card and a 4-person office. All right, we're talking about using Wizards as an example. They are not a technology company. They're a game company. They build board games. They build all these different things. So they were learning how to become a technology company, which was where we were starting to really drive this into their heads. And how I knew I got it was when we had a director, senior director, actually call out one of the VPs in the meeting. So this is like one of them churning on their own. It was beautiful to watch because they were telling me, well, we're going to be launching this on April. And this senior director was like, well, I thought you can only pick one. And I was very professional about it. I was like, inside I was like, yes. So keep that when you're dealing with the business, especially when it comes to the beginning of the statement of work, is that you want to make sure that you are giving them only one choice. Do not get bullied into giving it all up. You need to have that leverage because that leverage is what's going to buy you credit later down the road when you do have to make adjustments. But that takes us to now the other side of the coin. I don't know why I put the techies. It sounds like the Goonies, that old movie, but it resonated a little bit because I've worked in technology for so long, and the diversity of the industry is absolutely amazing because I think of some of the teams I've worked on over the course of the years, and they are just extremely varied in terms of attitudes and in terms of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And I'm not talking about office behavior. I'm talking about like coding practices. I'm talking about, I made a joke one time at Hasbro about, our QA was testing on production and letting the users test for us. And everyone laughed like, it's a funny joke. And I was like, sort of in the back of my mind, well, that's what we were really doing, because we didn't have budget for QA. It was a startup, you know what I mean? So, looking at that, it's a very different perspective on it. But when we talk about the technical artists, okay, we're talking about developers. We're talking about designers. We're talking about QA, DevOps, Scrum Masters, UX, UI. Anyone not on the business side who's ingrained on the Agile team, that's who we're sort of talking about in this case. Analysts, everyone who works and contributes to complete a sprint is what we're talking about when we talk about the techies. Now, me personally, I'll share a little bit about myself, is that I am not an artist. I am not creative in terms of art, beauty, things like that. My son self-taught himself the piano, self-taught himself this other piece of music software. His mind, the way it works, just blows me away. And I know he didn't get it from me because I don't think like that in terms of creativity in that space. My creativity is in elegant code, is in writing methods that return very quickly, beating the acceptance criteria of a story out of the park. When I was a developer, that's what made me happy. From the product management side, it still falls along that same side. When we show an increase in velocity during the sprint, or we overcome a very unexpected pivot that we had to make, and we overcome it and keep going, when the morale is high, those are what get me excited now from the same way when I used to write code. But it still is a form of art. It's binary art, lots of ones and zeros. And it's funny because the perception the business has of the technology team varies. Some days we're the geniuses that can solve everything because usually they need it, or we're incompetent and can't get anything right because we didn't get something right. And that's where we need to remember the optics and what the people see visually, even if it doesn't match the story, still tells a different story to the business side of things. My first job out of college, I worked in Arizona State University, Department of Physics. I was working with two teams from JPL and NASA on building telescopes, sort of like Hubble, but very little ones. And my boss I was writing code in one monitor and I had another monitor up. And as a joke, I wrote a script, and all it did, it was a Linux prompt, and it would just go through the directories and just cycle through and list every item in the directory, switch, list everything, but the screen was always moving. It was always scrolling. And every time my boss would walk by, now my boss, he was a physics professor. He's a smart person. He was like, oh, what's going on in that monitor? I said, that's just data processing. ooh, that's good. I was like, yeah, oh, look, you know. And I said it sort of tongue in cheek as a joke, but I didn't get at the time that he doesn't really have a sense of humor. And he took it literally and then started bringing other people around to see the data. And luckily they were so far away from the desk that they couldn't just tell it was like listing directory contents. But it was also the area where it's like, you know, you just got to be mindful of what you're doing and how the optics look. The tech team tends to feel like they're short order cooks. When we talk about the restaurant, it's like McDonald's. A lot of the times, the dev side feels like, okay, 4 burgers, whoosh. Did I meet the requirements? Yeah. Does the customer get it? Yeah. Are they happy they ate it? Yeah. But that's a crappy burger, and we all know it. You know what I mean? It's not like we have to be McDonald's short order cooks. We can be Applebee's. Applebee's is okay. You know what I mean? We can be like fine dining, 3-star Michelin type stuff too. That's probably like, you know, the bigger game. But we also have to remember that, you know, if you look back at the restaurant and look back in the kitchen, what kind of cooks do you want making your products? Do you want McDonald's or do you want, there's got to be something better than Applebee's. You guys can make up whatever you want in there. The dev team though, they know how to help and they know the how, but you need to really teach them and get them to understand the what and why. And if that means bringing the customer in and having a sit down, old school mafia style, get them all at the table, you know, one person leaves the winner or something, do what you got to do. But if you've got a person over here telling you in one ear, oh, I want this, da, 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 and then you take that over without clarifying over to the tech team, more than likely they're going to give you exactly what you asked for. And I would say in a healthy amount of times, it's not what they want. Sometimes what they want is the new cool shiny thing that someone else has. Or sometimes it's something that they saw that they thought was going to be amazing, but it's not. Or they think they know what they want, but then when it gets down to it, they don't because they are, you know, they're like, oh, I want a website that's going to be on my phone. It's okay, so take the website, build responsive code around it, and make it sit for the iPhone. No, if you click on it on the screen, so you want an app. Oh, yeah, I want an app for just the iPhone. Okay. You build the app for the iPhone, goes out, he's happy, she's happy, whatever. And then it won't work on my friend's Galaxy. Well, you said that you wanted it for the iPhone. Well, I meant like all smartphones, you know? That's where you're going to find yourself buried into a corner. Learn to speak businessese. Learn to speak the language of business. Okay? There's nothing wrong as a product manager with going to someone outside of your comfort zone and saying, hey, let me buy you coffee. Let me learn about what you do. Let me learn some of the lingo that you use, whether it comes to finances or budgets or whatever it is. Find someone you don't know and learn about what they do. Because it's going to give you 2 things. One, it's going to give you a connection and a networking opportunity within the company that you're going to be able to say, okay, cool, I've now formed a relationship with this person, and now I have an avenue down the road if I need something or if we can help each other. Okay? And on that same token, that you're going to become a smarter business product manager to be able to translate what they really want to the devs and help you with your planning and your stories and your grooming and all that. Okay? I get teased at work all the time for 2 reasons. One, because I put my foot in my mouth more than any other person probably in our team, and it's because it's the East Coast of me. I sometimes forget to turn the filter off, so it just comes out. But on the other side, they give me a lot of crap because I'm always asking questions. Always asking questions. You might have seen a video on YouTube called Cracking the PM Interview, and it's very, very popular. And one of the things that they talk about in that is asking clarifying questions. And I mean, I feel bad for my girlfriend. I mean, we can't even go out to dinner without getting 5 clarifying questions. All this product management is driving me because, oh, want to go to dinner, babe? Sure. What are you in the mood for? You know, maybe tie or, you know, okay, tie. Okay, which tie do you want? There's this one, there's this one, there's this one. And I'm already digging to deliver the best experience, and I drive her crazy with it. But you know what? This is the life we've chosen. At the end of this, though, meeting's bad. From the tech side, I'll make a generalized statement is that most of the time they hate meetings. They want to be doing their craft. They didn't go to school to become me. They didn't spend all those hours. I'll speak from personal experience. I didn't spend all those hours in a lab, 2 a.m. on a Saturday, cranking out something and cranking out C code just to go to meetings for the rest of my life. I want to be building awesome things that are going to blow people's minds. And so that's why there's a lot of reasons. That's why you have to make those meetings valuable. That's why you have to realize, what is your cost ratio? If your meeting is costing $5,000 and you're getting $5,000 out of it because you're losing more because that product's not getting out to market quick enough because the devs are in there talking about stuff they already know and essentially just trying to appease the business. And that's the dynamic that we have to get away from. We have to get away from, we're just trying to please the business, or we're just trying to deal with their BS. Because on the same side, they're talking on the same side about the dev side. Those estimates are just buffered. They're padding them to make sure they get it done right. Or how did this bug get through, how did this bug get through to production? Even though when they make statements like that, they don't know that that bug came from 4 very distinct queries that ran at the same time that caused that one bug. And they don't know that the cost of finding out where that bug came from and fixing it is going to be probably double than what it should have been. But they just think that we just skipped it, you know what I mean? Those are the dynamics. We have to be aware of those within each other's teams. Now, your focus, though, on the tech side, on the development side, isn't really centered around actions or decisions. It really boils down to to values. Okay? Commitment, honesty, respect, and accountability. This is something I preach to my team all the time because I consider myself a different kind of manager, okay? I don't fit into the mold of your typical manager of a team because all I care about are these 4 things with my team. I don't care where they do them. I don't care what time they do them. If they are championing their product as they should be for this role, if they are the evangelist to the outside world about how great this product is, and if they're the ones inside finding out the best way to make it amazing, they could be doing it out of Starbucks for all I care, okay? I want to hit home runs. I don't have to do it at the park. I can do it anywhere. But without these 4 values, holding your team to their commitments, holding your team to being honest about those commitments, respecting when you get that answer that you didn't want, and respecting it because they're being honest and they're making a commitment, is also going to give you a measure of accountability to first holding the dev team accountable to their commitments, but then also you're going to be held to accountability from the business side. And this is part of, if you have this on your dev side, if you get the people living these values, over-living them to a fault, almost where you think it's almost a reality TV show or something, your dev team is going to be on fire. But it's only going to matter if the business side also understands these values and respects them. And if they know, and I do this a lot at work currently and before, I will get an estimate from someone like, hey, we need to do this thing. What do you think it is? We'll talk it out. And he'll give me like a rough swag, like maybe like 3 days, 5 if I do this other thing. My team knows that when they make a commitment to me, that I'm going to take that commitment and run it right up to our CIO if I have to, if I could. Not because I'm putting them on the spot, but because the commitment's been made, I'm assuming it's honest, I'm giving it respect, and now I'm not going to bother that person because I'm assuming that it's already done. I'm assuming that that's already in the bag, bam. Because when you make a commitment, if you say it's by Friday at 4, I've had my own team sometimes where I'm like, look, guess we're staying tonight. I don't like keeping teams late, but I'm trying to instill the spirit of when you make a commitment, you do everything possible by any means to get that commitment fulfilled. And if not, then you look back, figure out what could have been better, and revise. Retro it and go backwards. But if you don't give that 4,000% to meet that commitment, the business is not going to look strongly on these values. You're instantly going to lose some credibility. Not in a bad way, but just in terms of like credibility in the sense of they'll look at it and say, okay, well, they said Friday at 4, but I saw the whole team leave at 6 the other night and it wasn't done yet. Like that's not really good. And then now you have to go explain to the business why or what happened or things like that. So that's why these commitments, I hold them to be rock solid with my team because then they make smart commitments. They know that I could tell anyone about their commitment and they're very wise about it now. And if I smell BS, and that's one of the things we need to work on is smelling that BS, because you'll get it from both sides. You got to call them out in their honesty for that too. You have to be not afraid to be like, really? They didn't know, the team I was working didn't know I had a development background. So it was like this really simple fix in running through Selenium, which is automated QA. And they gave me like a week and a half as an estimate. And I said, really? Yeah, well, we have to do this and that. And I said, you know what? I said, never mind. I'll just do it myself tonight. What do you mean? I said, because I know you're blowing smoke at my ass and I don't want to deal with it. Oh, okay, well, we'll have it in 2 days. Thank you. And that's when the honesty part came, because now they knew they couldn't BS me. On the business side, I'm also pushing that same honesty. Like, oh, we got to get this out by March 19th. Why? Oh, because that's the delivery date that we promised the shipping company or whatever. And that's when I start getting a little deep and go, who made that delivery date? Was it you? And then sometimes I'll find out it was that person. And now they don't want to get on the hook to have to go in and explain why they have to change a date. So if you can build that bridge between these values, it's golden. Drawing a balance. This is something that I feel I did a really bad job of so far tonight, because I am showing you my bias to the tech side. That's where I came from. And I've caught myself a few times tonight sort of lining up with my team over here like, yeah, screw the business. Yeah, we're going to stick it to the business. I don't mean it like that. But as a product manager, you have to draw a balance. You have to balance both sides. You can't show favoritism to one side. Just because you've maybe worked with some people on one side or the other, you can't just change it up and be like, oh, we'll do it for you this one time. Because the minute you do that, you're done. You've blown your credibility, and furthermore, you've gone outside the process for a personal reason, and it should be business, never personal. Okay, I'm not trying to sound cold, it's just true. It's business, not personal. I don't care about your dog having a broken paw, whatever like that. I'm cared about our product today, right now, and our customers who are using it. On that same note, you represent the product. You don't represent people, you don't represent, to a degree you represent the company, but you're representing the people who are using the product. You are the voice of those people. You are the voice to make sure they get the best experience, the best quality, and they have a constantly set of features that keep it scalable and up to date in the tech field. Okay? That is your main focus, as we talked about. The customer experience is how you're going to measure how good of a job you're doing. Okay? Sometimes the best customer feedback is none. Because a lot of the times, and call me pessimistic if you want, that's fine. I think for the most part, people are generally most self-centered. They care about their happiness for the most part, and they're on their phone all the time. Ride the light rail somewhere. It's quiet. Everyone's on their phone. So they're not going to be actively coming after you going, oh my God, this was great. That query is so much faster now. I am so happy. You're not going to see that blow up on Instagram or Twitter. Okay? What you're going to see is that when it doesn't load the first time and restarts itself, you're going to see it blow up like it was no one's business. And so that's where your customer experience is the measuring stick. Now, there's ways you can go solicit feedback, market research, Twitter polls, whatever. There's ways to solicit that feedback. But in some cases, you're going to get BS feedback too. It's not going to be authentic because you're still trying to draw it out or incentivize it out for some reason. Forget where you came from, and this goes back to what I said earlier. Forget where you came from, remember where you are now. And that's what my constant struggle is. I have to forget that I came from the dev side. I got to forget that I came from the tech side. Okay? I got to know where I'm at right now, and that is in the product management of a company. And my job is to be the balance, to wear the many hats, and also at the end of the day, to be the best problem solver that the company's ever seen. Now that may sound like ego, that may sound like cocky or whatever. It's not meant to be. What it is meant to be though is that you are competing against other products in your company. You're competing against other product managers in your company. You're fighting for the same resources sometimes. You're fighting for the same people's time, okay? And at the end of the day, I want what's best for my company. But at the end of the next day, I want what's best for my product. And I'll do it by any means necessary. Because I want my customers to say, if they know, and I don't mean, and we don't, no company I've worked at brands it this way, but if a company we're working with knows that I was on the project as a product manager, I want them to go, oh, okay, good, this is going to be great. That's what I'm always striving for. However, you need to have empathy. You need to be empathetic of the people that you work with, on both sides of the coin. I had this one person who I worked with, she was a brand manager, and razor sharp in the brand and marketing game. Razor sharp, one of the best minds I've ever met. But she had this really annoying habit of when she was thinking about something, she would stretch out all of her words. And by the end of the time, after like 2 meetings, I was just like, I'm going to put my head through this table. I'm dying here. Well, I did by example. I was honest, and I had a really gentle conversation. I was like, I love working with you, and you're great. I'm like, but I need to know what's with the but. I said, because it's driving me crazy, and I want to know if I just had to tell you. Well, what happened was, what she told me was that she's worked with devs and tech side so long and dealt with so many different personalities that she had built herself up this one tone to use with the tech side. And it was like a really sing-songy, happy, rhythmic that was supposed to give a comforting feeling, she said. And then it clicked. I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, so you're not just doing this to annoy me. You're doing this because it's been over the pattern of time. The other part is that, you have to look at where on the dev side, on the tech side of things, we are under a lot of pressure. Whether it's deadlines, sprints, meetings, whatever it is, there's a lot of times where we're under a lot of pressure, okay? We need to be empathetic, though, of the business side, that they too are under pressure. We all have a boss. Someone's always coming up asking for something. Someone always wants a favor. And it just doesn't happen on the tech side. It happens on the business side, too. And we need to be empathetic of that to be able to see what's in their shoes, how they're handling things, and what could be going on in their space that could be impacting some of these things. Because a lot of the times in a lot of companies, people are not going to want to show all their cards because there's something hidden that they're either trying to fix or they don't want to get out because they're going to get a bad rep. They think they're going to get in trouble. And that is where you need to be able to remember that there might be cards you're not seeing. I'm not telling you to dig into their business and find out what those cards are, but if you're building the relationship with both sides of the coin, you're going to be able to have that conversation and be like, look, I need to sync up with you for 5 minutes. Like, what is going on with this? Because this is out of the ordinary for you. Like, is there something I don't know? I promise not to tell anyone. Most of the times, if they do, you'll draw it out right there. And if you draw it out right there, you do have to keep it to yourself because you made a promise, you're honest, you're being accountable, things like that. But that's going to give you the information you need to be able to navigate better and work around the challenges that are in front of you. And it's not easy, but it's like I said, it's a chess game. If I move here, they're going to move there, and eventually I'm going to checkmate you and get what I want. Push versus pull. This is something that I probably really learned the importance of push versus pull when I was working in Maine at this market research company. And I don't know if any of you know anyone in the research game. It's not exciting. It's a great industry, but it's not the startup world. There's no parties, there's no beer at the office. It's a very quiet, boring place. But you're also dealing with a lot of different personalities. And at this company, we were dealing with a lot of different, some introverts, some extroverts, some who were very oriented on what they wanted to do, some who were fly by the seat of their pants. And you had to be able to know, I had to be able to figure out very quickly, who could I push? Meaning, who could I push to do better? Who could I motivate to get to the next level? Can I find this team and push them to give me more points this sprint? Who can I push back on when someone says, "Oh, well, I need this thing done. Can you do it for me?" Who do you know who to push on? Push back on. I tell every single one of my product managers this. I said, if you cannot walk into our director's office today and tell them no to something he requested, then this might not be the best job for you. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just the way it is, that you got to be able to push back sometimes and know when to push back. And that's part of being strategic. That's part of just being ahead of what you're trying to do. We talked about the chess game, but in why you should push or pull, we talked about the push side of it. You're pushing for something. You're pushing back. You're pushing for more. You're pushing for better. Pull is where you need to utilize the people in your company and pull them into your circle, even if it's for a short time. Because if I took one of you up here right now and I grabbed you by the shirt and pulled you into me, your first thing is you're going to try and pull back. You're going to try and get away from me. Because why is this product manager pulling on my shirt? But we want to pull them into our circle and use them for something that helps our product. Whether it's a data scientist who can do something for us, or whether it's a SME on some part of SEO, or whatever it is. We need to pull them in just enough for as long as we can hold them until they break free and get away again. And we got to get what we can get for them right then and there. Okay? But you also have to know that sometimes you can push and it turns into a pull. And this is why it's important to know when to push or pull. Because an example of this would be if I was working and I needed someone who was a UX expert that wasn't in our team, I would instinctively go to pull them in, get what I need, and then release. Okay? But sometimes the people you work with may not come from the same mold. Okay? Maybe if I push, I keep on pointing to him like you've had every position tonight. Great, thank you. But if I push him and say, okay, look, I need you to give me some better UX because this is not going well right now. Knowing his personality, I know I just lit a fire that he's going to come back with some amazing stuff just to prove me wrong and just to stick it to me. So now he's come into my circle. I've pulled him in by pushing. Okay? That is where you have to balance out. You can't always be a pusher. And you can't always be a puller. You have to balance it or else you're going to get labeled as either someone who just takes help and never gives it or what have you. So whatever you're getting from these push and pulls, you also have to remember to pay it back, whether it's to that person down the road or to someone else. And make it visible that you're giving back. Okay? Not because it's nice to do nice things for people, yes. But we live in the real world, and when people see you do nice things or hear about you doing nice things, you're going to gain credibility in your workplace. Someone's going to see it and go, oh, damn, that was awesome. Good job, Tony. I didn't know that. Now, it's one of those areas you just got to be very, very cognizant of. Also know who you can push and who you can pull. And also know if you can even push or pull those people. There are some people that you just can't push or you just can't pull. And it's not because they're resistant or, in some cases, you might not have the relationship to actually do it. You may know them on a certain level, but maybe you never worked with them. And if you instantly get into push-pull mode, it's going to be really awkward. Our CIO for our division, I have a relationship with him, and I've only met him maybe 4 or 5 times. He's an excellent leader, great champion of our company. His name is Ted, and so, but I know that I can't push Ted anytime probably. Ted's got a lot of things going on. He's always busy. He's always on the go, and he's got a great team that helps him do the awesome stuff that we do. But I know that if I needed something to pull Ted in for something, I know that I can, but I know that I'm only going to get one pull. And that next pull might not come for a year. So you've got to be very strategic of when you're doing the pushing and the pulling. Because if you call someone in for like a sort of important thing and you utilize them that one time, and then the next time something critical comes up and you try and pull again, you might not get them the second time. I mean, look, I just hooked you up like a week ago, okay? I got stuff to do. So that's where the strategy comes in of knowing who you can, who you can't, and then either push or pull. Identifying targets of opportunity all over the organization. This is interesting because, again, it sounds, for lack of better words, it sounds shady. And it's not meant to be shady, it's meant to be strategic. I look at things in a very, very warfare type attitude because I want my products to be the best. I want my team to be the happiest. I want all my product managers who work for me right now, I want them to be happy that they know I got their back and I can trust on them. But also looking out throughout the entire org is that you got to build relationships and you got to think like, look, you know what? We're taking this web-based tool and we're going to put it in mobile probably in the next 18 months. It'd be really nice to have a mobile expert who I could bounce ideas off of or someone to get me data. Like, you know what? I know that person who works over in that department. Maybe I'll swing by and start seeing if I can build a relationship with that person. Now, I'm not using this person. I'm actually being nice and being friendly and stuff like that. But what I'm saying is I'm thinking ahead saying, okay, I might need this person in 18 months for something. And I want to be able to have that relationship where I'm comfortable to be able to go and say, hey, come in for an hour. I need your help. So that's why you look for those targets of opportunity around the company, because you never know who's going to transfer into your team. You never know who's going to transfer out of your team. You never know who's going to have the next big job that is perfect for you. And because you form that relationship, it just might be yours.